Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael G. Neese, president of Our Future is Kind, and your trusted companion as we search out kindness strategies we can use in our everyday lives. Together, as we chase the idea of building a kinder future, we will interview experts in kindness, team building, human motivation, corporate culture building, relationships, plus politicians, artists, and those with a vision for a healthy and kind future, one we all want to live in and deserve to enjoy together. In addition to interviews, we will consider positive depictions of humanity's future in art, literature, movies, and media. And we will issue kindness challenges each week, give an update about Our Future is Kind, the company, and what it's doing to stay true to its mission. So, let's dive in. Welcome to Our Future is Kind podcast. I am so thrilled today. I have been waiting and hoping for this particular interview for so long. I've been a huge fan of Daryl Davis and his work that he has done to reach across various lines where people don't always see him as a friend, but ultimately decide, wow, he really is a great one. Daryl Davis, just very briefly, he's a role model for anybody who wants to learn how to bridge divides over some of the hardest, most divisive issues that are facing us today. So, Dr. Daryl Davis, please, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, well, I have just barely scratched the surface on who you are. I'm hoping that you can tell me, what are the things that you're best known for so that our audience can get to know you better?
Well, probably two things. One, music, and the other, my take on race relations, where some people consider it going to the extreme, a black man sitting down and having conversations with white supremacists such as KKK members or neo-Nazis. So that seems to be the labels that get pinned on me.
Sure. And is that who you think of yourself as? Like, you wake up in the morning and you think, man, I got to get in some practice time and I have to make that phone call to, a KKK member. I mean, are those the thoughts that are rattling around inside of you?
No, not necessarily, but it's just my life. It's just what I do, what I've always done. I've always been curious about people who have ideologies far different from mine. I'm trying to understand, how do they arrive at that? Where is it going, etc. And music is just, a part of my life. So it's the norm for me. And I didn't realize, for quite a while that it was not the norm for everybody else.
Right. Well, having that artistry, I imagine, especially since you have this improvisational nature in music, that you can, turn on a dime and you can change up what you're doing. I guess that must help with conversational acuity as well.
Sure, that does. But let me say this, because people figure, well, how does a musician go about sitting down with KKK members? I mean, they're all about jamming with, creating songs and all that kind of stuff. I look at it a little differently. I'm a musician. I'm a band leader in my own band, and I'm a side man in somebody else's band unless they appoint me band leader or something. So when I'm a band leader, whether it's my band or in somebody else's band, my job is to foster harmony on my stage between all the voices, whether they're the vocal voices, the horns, the strings, the piano, guitar, bass, drums, whatever. I want harmony. The only time I want dissonance is when I intentionally inject it into the music for effect, right? It's sort of like a movie, you have diminished chords or whatever, to create some kind of effect, right? If dissonance happens randomly, that's not music, that's noise. Somebody went out of tune, somebody hit a bad note, whatever, right? So you want controlled dissonance, all right? Otherwise, you want harmony. So when the gig is over and the curtain comes down and I step off the stage, now I'm out in society, I want harmony there too. I don't want dissonance around me.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thought. And I guess harmony and truth have to be balanced in some ways, because sometimes if you're speaking your truth, especially in a musical venue, then speaking your truth, other people have to try to find the harmonies around it. And sometimes you have to find harmonies around somebody else's truth. Would you say that that strikes a chord with you?
No, because there's only one truth.
Mm.
There are, I hear people say, oh, he's speaking his truth. Well, no, it's not his truth or her truth or my truth. There's only one truth. It may be his opinion, her opinion, my opinion, but there's only one fact. Now, can two things be true? Sure. Is the glass half empty or is it half full? Well, they both are opposites, so to speak, but they're still the same truth.
Gotcha. So let's grab hold of that and dig in just a little bit. Very specifically, the way that I know you is from your work in race relations. You have dialogues with people who, at least on the surface, would do you harm. And I'm just curious, why have those dialogues? Why is this important?
I think it's important because people are afraid. They're afraid of one another. And you cannot bridge that gap of fear, excuse me, until you understand the root cause of it. And most often, the root cause of it is ignorance. Ignorance breeds, and I use ignorance not necessarily in the derogatory sense,
Sure.
but in the sense of being unaware, uneducated to the facts about whatever it is. And I'll give you a true example momentarily. People fear that of which they're ignorant. And if you do not keep that fear in check, that fear in turn will escalate into hatred, because most people hate the things that they fear. All right, think of whether it's walking down a dark street at night, in some city that has a reputation for violence or something, or whether it's going to Disney World, Disneyland, and someone wants you to ride the roller coaster with them. Ooh, I hate roller coasters. Well, why do you hate roller coasters? Because they scare the daylights out of me. The fear, so that's how it works, right? Okay, so ignorance breeds fear. If you don't keep that fear in check, that fear will escalate to hatred. If you don't keep that hatred in check, the hatred in turn will escalate to destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because they scare us. But guess what? At the end of the day, they may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant. All right? So, even, and this is true for adults. It's also true for kids, little kids. I've spoken to everybody from elementary school all the way up through college, through corporate. And I can tell you, I have spoken to little kids in elementary school, and they're all sitting in little rows at their desks listening to me. And of course, I tone things down, for their age level. But I'll just be talking casually like I am right now, and then out of the blue, I'll say, hey, there's a snake under your chair. And just at my suggestion that there's a snake under some little kid's chair in the first row, everybody 6 rows back scream and throw their legs up in the air. The snake is supposed to be in the front row, and everybody in the back is throwing their legs up in the air.
Right.
And they're screaming. And then they realize there's no snake there, and they start laughing. And I say, why were you all screaming and stuff? And the responses I get are, I hate snakes. I'm afraid of snakes. Hate, fear. And I say, well, why do you hate snakes? Why are you afraid of snakes? And they say, well, snakes are poisonous, which is not true. Not all snakes are poisonous. That's the ignorance. Or they say, well, they're slimy. I hate them. No snake is slimy. Snakes are dry.
Right.
So again, ignorance. So I say, okay, well, obviously there's no snake under your chair. I'm just making a joke. But let's just say there really was a snake under your chair. What would you want me to do about it? You know what they say? Kill it.
Wow.
And there's your destruction. And this is coming out of people less than 10 years old.
Right. So
okay, so the solution, well, here's what I see. I see that we spend way too much time in our country talking about the other person, talking at the other person, and talking past the other person. Why don't we spend a little bit of time talking with the other person? I'm a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. The fighting is on hold while you're talking, right? So it's when the talking ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep that conversation going, And I also feel that we spend too much time addressing the destruction. Yes, the destruction is bad, but let's not waste our time addressing that. What's been destroyed is not coming back. The destruction is a symptom of the nucleus. It's a byproduct of the nucleus, the root cause. So forget about the destruction. Forget about the hatred. The hatred is also a byproduct of the nucleus. Forget about it. Forget about the fear. That too is a symptom. The root cause of all that is ignorance. If we can cure the ignorance, then there is nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to get angry about and destroy. And the good thing is this: we can cure ignorance. The cure for ignorance is education and exposure. And that's where we should invest our time, our efforts, our money, our energy.
So when you are spending time with folks who don't see things the same way that you do, and in fact are very afraid of you or even hateful of you, it's with the intention of giving them some exposure to who you really truly are. Is that a piece of this set of conversations?
Absolutely, 100%. Okay. And, when you see my name in the media, often it will say, black musician converts X number of KKK or white supremacists. No, I did not convert anybody. Not even one. I am the impetus for over 200 to convert themselves. I don't, get out there and say, no, you're wrong, give me your robe, or get out of this thing. That does not work. You have to bring them to the point where they are thinking and they arrive like, what? I might be going down the wrong path. I need to change my direction. That's the best way, rather than try to force something upon somebody.
Well, I think that the thoughts that the various people that you have met with who have ultimately become your friend, and to see you as a friend, I think thoughts are very important, but I've also watched your interactions with at least a couple of these former Klansmen. And there's warmth. There's genuine respect and kindness. There's laughter. I think that there's also a feeling that you're conjuring up with that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because our audience, we're always trying to figure out, what are the best ways of being kind in the world and really connecting with other people. I think you have a gift there, and I think you have an intentionality about how you go about it. But can you speak to that feeling that is also being exchanged?
Absolutely. But first, let me go into my background so people understand how I arrived at that.
Sure.
Excuse me again. I'm age 66, and I was the child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service, so State Department. So I grew up as an American embassy kid, living in different countries around the world. I started traveling around the world at the age of 3. And how it works is you go to a country abroad, you're there for 2 years, and then you come back home here to the States. You're here for maybe a few months, maybe a year, and then you're back overseas again for 2 years, back and forth, back and forth. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, all in different schools in different countries. Now, here's the thing. I started traveling in 1961 at the age of 3. So think back to the 1960s, right? My classmates overseas, when I was in school over there, whether it was kindergarten or whatever, my first school was overseas. So that became my baseline for what school was supposed to be, my first exposure to school, all right? This little girl here was from, let's say, Czechoslovakia. This boy here from Japan. That girl there from France. This person here in front of me from Nigeria. my whole class was like a United Nations of little kids, because everybody who had an embassy where we had our American embassy, all of their kids went to the same school. So I was exposed to multiculturalism before that word ever existed, long before that scenario came to our country. So literally, when I was over there, I was living about 10 years ahead of my time. We didn't see that until much later. All right. Every time I'd come back home after my dad's assignment, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity in my classroom back here that I had over there, right? And I didn't really get that. But now, even though desegregation was passed in 1954 by the Supreme Court, Brown versus the Board of Education, schools did not integrate overnight. It took years and years. And even now, in 2025, we're still dealing with it in some places in this country. And how sad is that? But anyway, one of the times I came back was 1968. I was age 10, and I was in the 4th grade, and here I am in a newly integrated school. There were only 2 black kids in the entire school, myself in 4th grade and a little black girl in 2nd grade. So consequently, my friends were 4th and 5th graders, not 2nd graders. So all of my friends were white. And several of my male friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join, 1968. So I joined. I was the only Black Scout anywhere in the area. And we had a parade with other organizations, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, 4-H Club, Brownies, whatever, Cub Scouts. I was the only black participant. And we're marching down the street. People on either side of the street are all white, waving and cheering and having a good time, smiling, until we got to a certain point in the route when I began getting hit with bottles and soda pop cans. And I turned to see who's doing this. And it was just a small group of people mixed in with the larger crowd, maybe 4 or 5 people. I remember there being a couple kids and a couple of adults. I assume it was kids and their parents. I don't know. But anyway, they were yelling and screaming. I couldn't tell what they were screaming because of all the band playing and all people yelling and cheering. Anyway, but I could see the objects coming. And my first thought was, oh, these people over here, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was, right? Because I had no precedent for this.
Right.
And it wasn't until my Scout leaders, who were white also, came running and covered me with their own bodies and quickly moved me, escorted me out of the danger. And I kept asking them, why are they doing this? Because now I realize I'm the only Scout getting this special protection. Nobody else was getting it. And I'm curious, and they're not answering my question. They're shushing me and rushing me along, telling me to keep moving. Everything's going to be okay. So everything was okay. They didn't follow us. And by the end of the parade, I still didn't have an answer. When I got home, my mother and father, who were not present at the parade, were cleaning me up, putting Band-Aids on me, and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them what had happened. And for the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Believe it or not, Michael, at the age of 10, I had never even heard the word racism. Wow. It did not exist in my sphere. Wow. Because I was around people from all over the world. We didn't look alike, maybe we didn't speak the same language, but we played together, we did our schoolwork together, we had slumber parties together. This racism, whatever they were talking about, did not exist. So I did not believe my parents because my 10-year-old brain could not process the thought that someone who had never seen me, spoken to me, or knew anything about me would want to hurt me for no other reason than the color of my skin. What they were saying made absolutely no sense. So they were wrong. And to further prove that I'm right and my parents are wrong is the fact that the people over here on the sidewalk doing this to me did not look any different than my little friends at school or some of my little friends overseas, whether they were my fellow Americans at the embassy or my little French or German or Danish or Swedish or Australian friends. So color had nothing to do with it. My parents were simply wrong. Again, this was 1968, and a lot of things happened. And I remember April 4th, 1968, the assassination of Dr. King. And it was unbelievable. I remember the buildings burning down, the fighting, the rioting, all kinds of stuff. And it was then that I accepted my parents had told me the truth. This phenomenon called racism does exist, but I didn't know why. And I formed a question in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 57 years, because I'm 66 now, I'll be 67 in 2 months, I've been looking for the answer to that question. Who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization whose whole premise is practicing hating people who don't look like them or who don't believe as they believe. So that's how I came to seek out members of the KKK, etc. But more importantly, let me tell you my favorite quote of all time.
Please.
It's by Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, right? And it's called The Travel Quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner all one's lifetime." And that is so true. And unfortunately, most Americans do not travel. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, less than 50% of Americans even own a passport. You know, Europeans, they travel all the time. They're always going somewhere. Between my childhood travels with my parents and now my adulthood travels as a professional musician who performs around the world, lectures around the world, etc., I've performed in all 50 states. When you combine those two sets of travels together, I have been in 63 countries on 6 continents. So I've been exposed to a wide variety of people. Some people who we have similarities, some people we don't have similarities, right? But I can tell you something. No matter how far I go from our own country, the United States, whether it's right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different somebody may be, they don't look like me or speak my language or worship as I do, or maybe not even worship at all, I always conclude one thing. Everybody I've encountered is a human being. And as such, I've come to learn that every human being has these 5 core values in common, regardless of what they have in contrast. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be respected. Everybody wants to be heard. We all want to be treated fairly and truthfully, and we all want the same things for our family as anybody else would want for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values or any of those 5 values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a culture or society in which we're uncomfortable or unfamiliar, I will guarantee you that your navigation of that situation, that culture, that society will be much more smooth, much more positive, and much more productive. So when you see me sitting around with Klan people, whether they are still involved or they're out of it now, whatever, and we're laughing and just having camaraderie or something, it's because of those 5 values. That is what connects us. So even though they don't have the travel experience that I do, they can still relate to those 5 core values, and I can bring them something vicariously. All right, and that's what I'm doing.
So that's how you draw out those great feelings, is with those 5 core values. I'm curious. I know that you have a new book. Are these?
Yes, I do.
Are these great secrets in there? Is this what you're going to teach us all in this next book?
Absolutely, yes.
Can you tell us about it?
This is the new book right here. It's called The Klan Whisperer. And it just came out about 3 weeks ago. And people can find it on Amazon, The Klan Whisperer by Daryl Davis. And yes, it is about 45 years of my life, or even back further, coming forward, the things that I've learned and how to apply these things effectively. Because listen, I majored in music. I'm just a rock and roll piano player. I'm not a sociologist or psychologist. But if I can do these things and accomplish them, Anybody can do it if you do it the right way and you know these core values and how to apply them, how to have conversations without getting triggered or triggering someone else. Yes, it can be done.
Well,
And it's all in the book.
I love the fact that you're teaching us all how to do this because at Our Future is Kind, one of the mantras that we have here is that everyone has power, and how you use that power matters.
Yes.
So, if you're willing, I want to take you along on a little journey that we always go on these episodes. Our Future is Kind is all about envisioning what a kinder future should look like. Because if you don't have a target, you cannot hit the target, right? Right? It's like trying to build a huge building with no blueprint. You better have a blueprint. The other thing that we talk about is what are those kind, courageous acts that we need to take to build that future. So if we can take this one at a time, in your mindset, in your thought process, if we as humans, we really come together, we start doing all of the things right. We start hearing each other and celebrating each other. And now it's 2125. And our kids and grandkids, all of these school kids that you see, it's now their kids who are in charge of everything. What does the world look like for them in 2125 if we're doing all the right things?
It'll be a more kind, more peaceful, more humane place if we're doing all the right things. And, you asked earlier, why do I do this? It may not be the norm for a lot of people.
Right.
Well, my parents did it for me. My parents had to ride in the back of the bus, drink from a separate water fountain, use a different bathroom, be refused entry into a restaurant or a store. Mm-hmm. I never had to ride in the back of the bus. I never had to drink from a separate water fountain. I've still experienced racism,
sure,
okay, but not as much as they have,
yeah,
because they made it a kinder, more gentle place for me when I came along, as their parents did for them. So
right.
Isn't it only right for me to try to make it a kinder and more gentle future for those who come after me? Because, see, I don't have what people refer to as white privilege. I didn't have that.
Right. Right. So I think you've also answered the second part of the question a little bit.
Sorry.
which is great. No, I mean, I'm writing my next book.
Excellent.
And it is going to feature you and your efforts because I believe that kindness takes courage. It takes mindfulness. It takes deliberate action and persistence. And those are the kinds of qualities that I think get us to that future. But did I leave anything out? Are there other things that you would prescribe to us? And I hope everybody has out your notepads right now and you're writing down whatever he says next. But what are those other things that we need to be doing to get us to that future?
Okay. So a lot, to me, I understand when people use the term courage as applied to me. I get it. Okay. But for me, honestly, it was more curiosity than courage. I never feared. I never feared once, even though I know the history of these kinds of people. I know the history very well. And I realize that I'm walking into what they call the lion's den or something. I never feared that. And yes, there may be some courage involved, but a lot of it's curiosity. And I think the curiosity comes, Michael, from my past, which is why I had to go into my background. Let's just say that I had not spent my life traveling around the world and been exposed to different people. Let's say I grew up my whole 66 years right here in this country. Would I be doing this today? Maybe not. Maybe I'd be staying as far away from those people as I could, because my whole mindset would be, oh, those people don't like me. Let me just avoid them or get contentious with them right back or whatever. But because I was exposed to people around the world who look exactly like those people who perpetrated whatever they did upon me. I cannot paint everybody with a broad brush. It's impossible.
Right.
So I have a worldview as opposed to a narrow view. And so for me, because I've already been around white people who treated me wonderfully, okay? And so why is it that people over in Sweden and Denmark treat me, who are more white than anybody in this country, because a lot of white people in this country are mixed with something, right?
Sure.
Whether it's slaves or Native Americans or whatever.
Sure.
These people over here are pure white. Why do they treat me better than my fellow Americans? That's the curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay. And why don't they realize, that white people are no more superior or inferior than anybody else? Neither are black people. So there's nothing to fear.
Right.
One of the differences is that in this country, we owned people. We owned people as property, and that mentality still exists. All right, still exists. Whereby Sweden or Denmark didn't own slaves. So the mentality is a little different,
right?
And so the mentality has been passed down. Okay, well now first we were working for them for free, all right, making them rich off our backs, picking cotton, tobacco, whatever.
Right.
Okay, so now I can't own you anymore, but you will never be my equal. You will never sit at my dinner table. You will never date my daughter. You will never rise high in my company, even though I have to hire you. You will always be here. Mm-hmm. So it's a different kind of slavery, Jim Crow slavery, if you will. And it's gotten better. But another thing that is happening today that the media does not talk about, and I know all about it, and I'll tell you, it's happening. I learned this in 1982 from the head of the American Nazi Party. I had a few encounters with him.
Wow.
And anyway, he was telling me about he told me a lot of lies, but one thing he told me was true, and this was true. I've been following it. These people, white supremacists, are very fearful of the year 2042. All right? The U.S. Census is taken every 10 years, every decade, right? When we were kids, doesn't matter how old you are, how old I am, when we were kids, the black population in this country was 12%. We're going back to the 1950s even, 12%, okay? Native Americans were only 1% of the population of the United States. Latino, Hispanic Americans, 2%. Asian Pacific, 3%. Whites, 86, 87%, back when we were kids, all right? Every 10 years, census is taken. This is happening. The last census taken was in 2020, and white people are at 59% today. Black people remain at 12%. They say 12.9, so they call it 13%. 12 to 13 is nothing, all right? Native Americans have not grown. They're still at 1%. Asian Pacific people have doubled from 3% to almost 6%. Latino, Hispanic Americans have more than quadrupled, 17 point something percent. So if you take just 12% black, 17% Latino, Hispanic, that right there is 29% by itself, let alone everybody else. That's almost a third of the population. This is happening. It is well predicted in the year 2042, this country, for the first time in its history, will be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. Between 2045 and 2050, it's going to flip. And for the first time, whites will become the minority. All right? Now, there are tons of white people in this country who don't care. They say, hey, no big deal. I can deal with that. It's evolution. Doesn't bother me.
Right.
And that's fine. But there is a large slice of our population that does care. And those are the ones that I deal with. And those, the Proud Boys, the alt-right, the Klan, the neo-Nazis. And what they tell me is, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation. And they're fearful. And that's why you see the proliferation of all these groups. When I first started this kind of stuff, way back 45 years ago, there were only like basically 3 groups. the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and white power skinheads. Now you got the Klan, neo-Nazis, white power skinheads, the Patriot Front, the Vanguard, the Aryan Brotherhood, on. And they all are saying, come join us, come join us. You know, we're going to take our country back. All right? So these people who fear that they're being erased run and join these groups to take their country back. You're old enough to know the term white flight.
Oh, yes.
Okay? So I was speaking to somebody who was 33 years old yesterday on another podcast. He never heard the term. And that's common. That's very common because guess what? White flight. Because there, you know, the American landscape has changed so much that anywhere you go today, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like you. So white flight is out of the window. You know, it's gone. Right. All right. So they're totally unaware of it. Young people had never even heard the term. All right. And, you know, and we don't have covenants anymore today where, you know, people move into a white neighborhood. They had covenants where you could not sell your house if you moved to a Jew or to a black. That was, you know. And so, and then, of course, you know, the covenants became illegal, but real estate agents would not show blacks or Jews houses in those neighborhoods even after that, right? Yeah. So, you know, there's always a way to get around something. Right. So they are fearing this demographic shift. And that is why we're seeing so many lone wolves today. All right. Because people run and join these groups that promise to take our country back. All right. When somebody gets frustrated because, you know, they haven't taken the country back yet, they say, you know what, if the Klan can't do it or the Nazis can't do it, I'll do it myself. And they walk into a black church in Charleston, South Carolina, and take out 9 black people doing Bible study. Or the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, take out 11 Jewish people. The Sikh Indian temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and murder 7 Sikh Indians doing their religious service. The Walmart in El Paso, take out 23 Hispanic people. The Buffalo grocery store. These are lone wolves, all right? And every time law enforcement takes one of them out or arrests one of them and searches their property, they always find a cache of automatic weapons that are being stockpiled and stored for what white supremacists call, they have 2 names for it. One name is called Rahowa, R-A-H-O-W-A, Rahowa. Okay, those are the first 2 letters of 3 words, racial holy war. Another term for it is called the boogaloo, not to be confused with the 1960s dance music, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Okay, boogaloo, right? So, yeah, when the white supremacists refer to Rahowa or the boogaloo, they're referring to what they call the race war. They're looking for the race war. You know, they haven't gotten over losing the Confederacy. And so this is why as we get closer and closer to 2042, unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of these lone wolves, which is why it's so crucial to have these conversations today. Because I know some of these people, man, and I know the mentality. They truly believe that they are patriots that have to save this country. In their mind, we built this country, we discovered this country, we wrote the Constitution, and now people are coming here and taking our country away from us who don't even look like us. That's the mentality. And they're surrounded in an echo chamber that keeps reinforcing that mentality.
Right. Yeah, at Our Future is Kind, we tend to take a much longer view. I used to work in planetariums for years and years and years.
I wanted to be an astronomer at one time.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
It is so much fun because you talk about how travel gives you this great perspective, that not everybody looks like you and talks like you and eats like you and all of those things. Getting into astronomy gives you the perspective of we are on this tiny little dot in the universe, and we are so lucky to be here at all. And one of the things that makes us even luckier is that we have each other. Right? I mean, the fact that we don't look alike and that you play music that may be different from my sister, who's a professional cellist, or, you know, I mean, those are the beautiful things that make life rich. It makes that tapestry more interesting to look at and to really dig into. So, yeah, I mean, I understand that it's these fears that we need to get past, and it's that sort of echo chamber mentality, that idea of just reinforcing the hate and the fear. We need to get past that. But that's one of the reasons why here at Our Future is Kind, we're just always talking about, all right, what does the future look like? What does a better place look like? It's one where everybody shows up at the table and is honored if they're showing up in good faith.
Yes.
If they're being inclusive.
And all this travel that I've done, let me be clear, does not make me a better human being than somebody with less travel. But what it does is it gives me a broader and better perspective on humanity than somebody who has not had that kind of travel.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's what I try to bring, vicariously to people. And today we have the tools to do a virtual travel, where I had to cross the Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and I still do, for some of the work that I do. But you don't have to do that. You can, like you and I are doing right now. You can be sitting in your home in New York City talking to somebody in South Africa or Australia or wherever, you want to talk. And why don't we use some of these tools to travel virtually? I call it walking across the cafeteria. And what I mean by that is this: we need to do more of that, both physically and virtually. Say in a metropolitan city or any kind of town where, you have some modicum of diversity. And whether it's in school or in the workplace, people may be working together on the same project, maybe even sharing the same cubicle, right? And they get along fine. What happens at 12 noon? Everybody goes downstairs to the cafeteria for lunch. And blacks sit with blacks, Hispanics sit with Hispanics, this group sits with this group. They self-segregate.
Right.
Does that mean that they are racist? No, not necessarily. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity.
Sure.
Now, except for me, but because I never grew up around familiarity. I was always around somebody different.
Right.
Okay, so people say people always tribalize. I said, well, I don't. But anyway, if you were to walk across the cafeteria and go sit at somebody else's table, who didn't look like you or have your religion or whatever it was you had, and they say, go away, you don't belong here. Go back to where you came from. Go back to your table. Yes, there's a problem, and it needs to be addressed. But I would say, once or twice a week, get up from your little comfort group at your table, walk across the cafeteria, and sit at somebody else's table, all right? And have lunch. Because that's where you're socializing, breaking bread with somebody, that's where you begin to form other opinions and learn things, all right, that are not in your textbook. Right. So, or in your company's, a handbook.
Right.
So, you have a lot to teach somebody. You have a lot to learn from somebody. And in the process, I guarantee you'll make a friend, and your perspectives will open up, and so you can do that physically in the cafeteria, or you can do it virtually. You're in communication with some other company or a branch of your own company that's in another state or another country, whatever. You're talking to somebody on Zoom calls like you are now, a Zoom meeting with somebody you never met, but you're doing business with them all the time.
Right.
Make it a point to email that person, say, hey man, can we meet up after work and just, sit on the Zoom for half an hour, how many kids do you have? What do they do? Da, da, da. You're going to find you have more in common with that person than you do in contrast. And for me, let's say I'm in a conference. I first meet this Klansman or white supremacist. We are this far apart on the ideological spectrum. We have nothing in common, so you think. But when you spend 5 minutes talking with your worst adversary or your worst enemy, you will find something in common, and that gap will narrow. Mm-hmm. You spend another 5 minutes, it's going to narrow some more. When you get here, you are having a relationship with your adversary. You might not be going to his birthday party or something like that, but you're in a cordial relationship. You keep on talking, it gets closer. And now you're friendly. You're friends with this guy. You may not agree on everything, but you're friends, all right? And by the time you're here, that person has found so much more in common than they have in contrast with you. Mm-hmm. And the trivial things that they have in contrast with you, such as skin color or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less, and they began to have a cognitive dissonance. Like, why did I dislike that person in the first place? He likes the same things I do. Well, this is ridiculous, And it becomes a dilemma.
Yeah.
So they have to resolve it. So this is what I call walking across the cafeteria. It changes perspectives because, one's perception is one's reality. Whatever somebody perceives becomes their reality. Even if it's not real, it's their reality. It's what they believe.
Right.
Okay? And something that people make a lot of mistakes with is this. People try to change somebody else's reality. You cannot change somebody's reality. It's real to them. They know what they know.
Right.
All right? And so when you try to force a change on somebody's reality, on their belief system, they're going to resist because they know they're right. All right? And if you keep on doing it, it's going to escalate into anger and then what? Destruction, violence. Right? You're going to start fisticuffs.
Right.
So if you want somebody's reality to change, what you have to do is you have to offer them a better perception or perceptions, plural. If they resonate with one of your perceptions, then they will change their own reality because one's perception becomes one's reality. All right, so let me give you a hypothetical example.
Sure.
Let's say that you have a little brother, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and he goes to the magic show with his buddies. And he comes home and tells you, Michael, you're not going to believe this. This magician on stage, he asked for a female volunteer, and 50 women raised their hand. He picked one out of the audience, brought her up on stage, where are you from? What's your name? And then he had her climb into this long box and put her feet out the hole at that end and her head out the hole at this end. And then he closed the box. He took a chainsaw and he went right through the middle of the box. The saw came out the bottom of the box. He cut her in half, man. And then he told her to wiggle her feet. And she wiggled her feet. And you say, listen, it didn't really happen like that. Yes, it did. I was there. You weren't there. I saw it with my own eyes. He's 100% right. You were not there. You did not see it. So how dare you tell him he didn't see it either when he was there? You were challenging his reality. You were more or less calling him a liar, and you weren't even there, right?
Right.
So he's getting a little edgy with you, right? And to prove that that it was real, he tells you after this man cut her in half and she wiggled her feet, he took the half of the box with the feet and moved it over here to stage right. And the half with the head, he moved it over there to stage left. And then he walked over there and he spoke to the woman's head and she spoke back with him. And then he brought the two halves back together. He did some abracadabra incantation, and then he opened the box and she climbed out. She got cut in half, put back together, and climbed out, and there was no blood. And you say, listen, that's an illusion. No, it's not. I'm telling you. He's going to go off on you. The man is going to go off on you, okay? Sure. So you don't want to attack anybody's reality. And even though you're old enough to know it's an illusion, it's a trick, okay? Right. He knows what he saw. And you were not there. You did not see it. So how dare you tell him he didn't see it either? That's his mentality. Okay, so rather than attack his reality, what you do is this. You offer him a better perception. You say to him, listen, I understand what you're saying. I hear you. But do you think that maybe, just maybe, that perhaps it's possible that when he asked for a female volunteer and these 50 women you talk about raised their hand and he picked one out of the audience, do you think it's possible that perhaps she works for him, that maybe she knows the trick and she travels all around the country with him and sits in that same theater seat wherever they are so he can look around the audience and then zoom in on her, bring her on stage, and then when she climbs into the box, there's already a pair of mannequin dummy legs lying on the floor of the box that are wearing the same stockings and same high heels that she has on. Right. She picks them up by the ends, by the handles on the end, and shoves them out the hole. And she brings her own knees up under her chest. So her whole body is on that half of the box. And when the man cuts the box in half, he never even touches her. And when he says, wiggle your feet, she grabs those poles and just shakes them, and the feet wiggle outside the door, the hole, right? And then when he separates the two halves, when he puts the half of the box with the feet over here, they can no longer move.
Mm.
So he has to distract your attention from looking at them. So of course he's going to walk over here because you're going to follow him, and he's going to talk to the head. Of course the head's going to talk back. Her whole body is there. He doesn't want you looking at those feet because they can't move anymore.
Mm.
So then when he brings the box back together, she just reaches across, grabs those poles, pulls them back in, and stretches out and climbs out of the box. She's been cut in half, no blood.
Right.
And your little brother says, that might be the only way that could work. You have offered him a better perception, and it has resonated with him, and he has come to the conclusion that he's wrong, and he has changed his own reality. That's how we affect change, not by knocking somebody's reality and forcing something down their throat.
So hitting people head on, fighting fire with fire is not the approach. The approach is understanding the fire,
right,
and then offering it something better.
Right. And fire is a double-edged sword. It can be used two ways, depending upon one's perception. If you're cold at your house, I can bring fire and heat your house. Or if I'm mad at you, I can come over and burn your house down with fire. Right. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I hope that everybody who's listening in and watching, I hope you've taken some great notes here, because these are wonderful suggestions. Can you hold up your book one more time and just tell us how can people get a hold of this book? Okay,
so if it comes out in a mirror image, it's because of our cameras here. But it's called The Klan Whisperer by Daryl Davis, and it's nonfiction, and it constitutes 45 years or more of my life and what I've learned and how I'm able to sit down and talk with white supremacists and gain their trust and their friendship. And guess what? I've got their swastika flags, their robes and hoods, and all kinds of things. And the book is available on Amazon.com. It comes in hardback and in paperback.
Wonderful. I actually have my copy on the way to my house right now, so
I appreciate that.
Cannot wait to read it, because I have this one. Which is a previous one that you'd written.
Yeah, that's the one that was put out in the UK. And
right.
this is the original previous one.
Oh wow! Look at that. Okay, so
that one doesn't have pictures in it. The one that you're holding up, but this one does. This is the original book, and this one is now out of print. So Clandestine Relationships, do not go on Amazon or eBay and try to buy this book, because the price is jacked up astronomically.
I did pay a high price for this one, and I'm going to say
I'm so sorry.
I'm going to say it's worth every penny. I really.
I appreciate it, but you know what? Yeah. What happens is this: booksellers. The book is out of print. I took it out of print, and some booksellers have leftover copies. So what they do is they jack up the price. Supply and demand, right?
Sure.
Okay, don't pay that kind of money for that book. Go. If you really, really want to read it, two things you can do: one, go to the library and check it out. It's free. All right. Secondly, this book, the original Clandestine Relationships, came out in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
Since that time, we've had a black president, we've had more immigration, we've had Charlottesville, we've had Donald Trump, we've had an insurrection, and we've had Donald Trump again.
Right.
So there's a lot more new material. This book has most of the original book in it already.
Oh wow! Okay.
And updates and new stories.
Well,
so this is the one to get.
So the Klan Whisperer is absolutely something that if you're listening in or you're watching, please go ahead and grab that. If you weren't watching, just to say it one more time, the name of the older title is Clandestine Relationships. And go to your library, grab a copy, because it is really good. I know that we're running short on time, so I just have two very, very quick questions for you. One is, what inspires you?
What inspires me is seeing other people inspired to do something, And yes, there's strength in numbers, but there's also a lot of strength in every individual. We all have abilities that we don't explore because we're told we can't do this, we can't do that.
Okay. Gosh, I love that. So, and then the last big question is, what's next for Daryl Davis? What are you working on right now? Are you promoting the book, I assume, and playing gigs, or
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
me?
I'm still playing gigs and still doing lectures, and and of course promoting the book. Um, this work has to be done. It has to be done.
Mm,
And trust me, as a music is my profession, but improving race relations is my obsession.
mm.
And I would much rather, trust me, I would much rather be on stage playing music and seeing my audience smile, or up on the dance floor dancing to my music, than going to a Klan rally and seeing people in robes and hoods march around a burning cross yelling white power. That's not fun to me. But it's necessary for me to do those things and have those conversations.
Right. So I'm going to call on everybody in the audience to do something that is a little scary for you, but that is worthy of a cause, that is worthy of building that kinder future that we all want so desperately. So,
And let me say this as
yes, sir.
well. Um, Two things. When we were all children,
Mm,
anybody in your audience, you and I, whoever, we learned, or we were told, that a tiger does not change his stripes. A
mm,
leopard does not change his spots. All right? So why would we assume that a Klansman or Klanswoman would change their robe and hood? That's who they are, like the leopard and like the tiger, right? So, you're not going to change these people. Well, you don't try to change them. They have to change themselves, okay? But we are wrong. Yes, a tiger cannot change his stripes, and yes, a leopard cannot change its spots. They were born with those stripes and spots. They're not going to change. However, a Klansman or Klanswoman or Nazi was not born with that robe and hood and that swastika. That was acquired.
mm.
It is learned behavior. And what can be learned can be unlearned, unlike the tiger and leopard that are born with those stripes and spots. Okay, they're not going to change. But an ideology can change, right? So it's up to us to do that.
Love
And
it.
we can do it as individuals, okay? We can do it as groups. But we have to make the effort. And I understand that not everybody, I'm on the front line. I'm there at the Klan rally, okay? Not everybody would feel comfortable doing that. And I get that. I understand that, okay? You don't have to be on the front line. You can be on the back line. You can be on the sideline. You can be online, all
Mm.
right? And what do I mean by that? Anybody out here probably has a favorite movie, and they can tell us the name of the movie. They can tell us who starred in the movie. They can tell us how many Oscars the movie won, or whatever. They may be able to tell us the name of the director of the movie, but can they tell us the name of all the camera people operating the camera? Can they tell us the names of the stunt people, or the wardrobe people, or the people operating the lights, or the makeup person? No. Okay. So the lead actress and lead actor are on the front line. All right. The camera people are on the back line. You don't see them, but you see whatever they're shooting. The director is there also. You got people on the sideline doing the lights, doing this, doing that, and you got people online promoting the film. All these people working together is what caused that movie to go to the Academy Awards and get that Oscar. Not just the actor, but the expertise of the director, the expertise of the camera people, the makeup people, the wardrobe people, all working together on their own individual lines that got that movie the acclaim that you found in it. All right. So we all can work together. Pick a line where you feel comfortable. Get on it, and help navigate this society into a better place.
That is such a lovely metaphor. And yeah, I hope that everybody who is listening in takes that advice. So, Dr. Daryl Davis, it has been such a pleasure, such a joy to meet you and have this time with you. So, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much, and I hope this will just be part one. There'll be another part to come.
Let's do it. Sounds
All
good.
right. Thank you, Michael. Take care.
For this episode's kindness challenge, we are going to follow Dr. Daryl Davis's advice. As he advises, you can work online on the sidelines or on the front line. In this episode's challenge, try going online to research a group you think views you as an enemy. Research any groups that stand in opposition to that hate group, and now decide if you can do something on the sidelines or on the front lines to help fight the fight. But step 1, do that research. To get more involved, reach out to a friend or family member who holds opposing views to yours, and then just listen, without judgment, without interjections. Just listen. If they invite a response and you feel you can give a calm one, express your own view without condemning theirs. Just state what you feel is true from your experience, and then listen some more. Let us know how these go. What are the challenges? What emotional responses does it bring up to sit with these ideas and with your friend or family member? In each episode, we also like to give you inspiration and depictions of kindness in the world. So check out the documentary Accidental Courtesy with Daryl Davis, and it's available on YouTube. Also check out Dr. Davis's books, The Klan Whisperer, that's K-L-A-N. That's by Daryl Davis, and it is his new release. Check it out on Amazon.com. You can look for his older title, Clan-Destine Relationships, A Black Man's Odyssey in the Ku Klux Klan, but he advises that you go to the local library and spare yourself the high cost since it is now out of print. Thanks again for listening to Our Future is Kind podcast, a podcast in search of a kinder future. Go out there and do something kind.